Chapter 1. Stop waiting to feel ready. The ghost of the perfect moment. Somewhere, right now, there is a person sitting at a desk with a brilliant idea. They have the talent. They have the resources. They have the vision. But they are not typing. They are not calling. They are not building. Instead, they are staring at a screen, waiting. If you ask them why they haven't started, they would give you a very logical-sounding answer. I'm just waiting for the right time, or I'm not quite in the right headspace yet, or the most common lie of all, I'm waiting for a bit of motivation. We treat motivation as if it is a divine visitor, a muse that must descend upon us before we can begin our work. We believe that we must first feel inspired, feel energetic, and feel confident before we can take the first step. This is the perfect moment myth, and it is the single greatest thief of human potential. The truth is that the perfect moment does not exist. It is a ghost. If you wait until you feel ready, you will be waiting for the rest of your life. Success is not reserved for those who feel ready. It is reserved for those who were brave enough to start when they felt completely unprepared. The great reversal, action first. We have the biological equation of success backward. Most people believe the sequence goes like this: inspiration, motivation, action. They believe they need a spark of inspiration, which leads to a feeling of motivation, which finally results in taking action. Under this model, if you don't feel the spark, you can't take the action. You are a victim of your internal chemistry. But high achievers, the finishers, the masters, the elite, operate on a different equation. They understand the great reversal. They know that the real sequence is action, motivation, more action. Inspiration is not the cause of action. It is the result of it. When you start working, even if you are tired, even if you are doubtful, even if you are bored, your brain begins to engage with the task. You solve a small problem. You see a tiny bit of progress. That progress triggers a release of dopamine. That dopamine creates the feeling we call motivation. Motivation is a byproduct of movement. It is the wind that catches the sails after you have started rowing. If you sit in the middle of the ocean waiting for a breeze before you pick up the oars, you will die at sea. Repeat this truth to yourself until it becomes your new reality. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. The psychology of procrastination. Fear in a suit. Why do we wait to feel ready? It's not because we are lazy. Laziness is a myth. Procrastination is actually an emotional regulation problem. Your brain is a survival machine. Its primary job is to keep you safe and comfortable. Action, especially action toward a big, new goal, represents uncertainty. Uncertainty represents a potential threat to the ego. What if you fail? What if people laugh? What if you aren't as good as you think you are? To protect you from these threats, your brain uses a very clever disguise. It tells you that you aren't ready yet. It suggests that you need more research, more coffee, or more inspiration. Waiting to feel ready is simply fear wearing a smarter disguise. It is your brain's way of keeping you in the safe zone of the status quo. Successful people do not have a lack of fear. They feel the same hesitation you do. They feel the same imposter syndrome. The difference is that they have trained themselves to recognize that not feeling ready is actually a signal that they are on the right track. It is a sign that they are pushing a boundary. If you feel 100% ready, you are likely playing too small. The growth is in the gap between your current ability and the requirements of the task. You must learn to bridge that gap with action, not with waiting. The rule of immediate action. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces in the universe, but it is also incredibly fragile. When an idea or an impulse to work appears in your mind, you have a very small window of time, usually less than 5 minutes, before your brain's defense mechanisms kick in and talk you out of it. This is where you must apply the rule of immediate action. The moment you have the thought to work, you must move physically. If you are on the couch, stand up. If your computer is closed, open it. Do not give your brain the 30 seconds it needs to generate an excuse. If you wait until tomorrow to act on a burst of insight, that insight will be dead by morning. The emotional energy will have dissipated. You will look at the idea and think, it wasn't that great anyway. Or, I don't really have the time today. To stay focused when motivation fades, you must become a person of low friction. You must make the transition from thinking to doing as fast as humanly possible. The mental trigger you must install is, do it now. Not do it in 10 minutes. Not do it after this video. Do it now. Every time you obey the do it now trigger, you are killing a little bit of the hesitation that has been holding you back for years. Confidence is a result, not a requirement. We often look at successful people and think, I wish I had their confidence. If I was that confident, I could start my business, too. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of how confidence works. Confidence is not a prerequisite for action. It is a result of a history of actions. When you start a task you don't feel ready for, you are practicing courage. Courage is doing the thing even though you are afraid or uninspired. After you have used courage to act 10 times, you start to see results. After you see results, you begin to develop competence. And once you have competence, confidence arrives naturally. You are trying to skip the courage and competence phases and jump straight to confidence. It doesn't work that way. You must be willing to be a clumsy amateur for a while. You must be willing to do the work while feeling unready. The person who waits for confidence is a spectator. The person who acts without it is a creator. The myth of the clean slate. Another way we wait to feel ready is by waiting for the perfect circumstances. I'll start my diet on Monday. I'll start my project when the kids are back in school. I'll focus on my finances when I have a clean slate. Life never gives you a clean slate. Life is messy, chaotic, and loud. There will always be a bill to pay, a cold to catch, or a distraction to deal with. If you can only work when the conditions are perfect, you will never finish anything of value. The real discipline of focus is the ability to work in the middle of the mess. It is the ability to carve out a sanctuary of action even when the world around you is in shambles. Stop looking for the perfect moment. It isn't coming. Instead, take this imperfect moment, with all its flaws, distractions, and doubts, and make it yours through the sheer force of action. Summary of Chapter 1. The feeling of being ready is an illusion used by the brain to avoid the discomfort of growth. If you wait for motivation, you are letting your biology dictate your destiny. To break free, you must realize that movement comes before motivation. You must apply the rule of immediate action to kill hesitation before it grows. You must stop treating fear as a stop sign and start treating it as a go sign. You don't need more time. You don't need more research. You don't need more inspiration. You just need to move. Core lesson: if you wait to feel ready, you've already lost. Success belongs to those who start while they are still shivering with doubt. Core repetition: action creates motivation, not the other way around. Chapter 2. Discipline is stronger than emotion. The liar in the mirror. Imagine your life as a high-performance vehicle. You have the engine of talent, the fuel of ambition, and the GPS of your goals. But there is a problem: the driver of this vehicle is your mood. On Monday, the driver is energized and focused. You speed toward your destination. On Tuesday, the driver is tired, slightly annoyed by a morning email, and discouraged by the rain outside. Suddenly, the vehicle pulls over to the side of the road. The engine is still perfect. The fuel is still there. The destination hasn't changed. But because the driver doesn't feel like it, nothing moves. This is how most people live their entire lives. They are passengers in a vehicle driven by the most unreliable, fickle, and dramatic force in nature: human emotion. If you want to stay focused when motivation fades, you must fire your mood as the driver of your life. You must replace the feeling-based life with a discipline-based life. You must come to understand one hard, fundamental truth. Your feelings do not care about your future. Your feelings only care about the next 5 minutes. Discipline, however, is the bridge between who you are and who you want to become. It is the ability to do what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. Why feelings are unreliable. We have been conditioned by a feel-good culture to believe that our emotions are the ultimate truth. We are told to honor our feelings and listen to our hearts. While this may be good advice for a therapy session, it is disastrous advice for achieving a difficult goal. Think about the variables that dictate your mood. Your feelings are affected by how many hours you slept last night. They are affected by the sugar levels in your blood. They are affected by the weather, by a comment a stranger made on social media, by the temperature of the room, and by how much caffeine is in your system. Your feelings are chemical weather pattern. They change 100 times a day. If you base your work ethic on your feelings, your output will be as unstable as the weather. When you say, "I can't work today because I'm not motivated," what you are really saying is, "I'm letting a temporary chemical state in my brain decide the trajectory of my life." Successful people do not lack the feelings of fatigue, boredom, or doubt. They feel them just as intensely as you do. The difference is that they have built a standard that sits above their emotions. They recognize that their feelings are just background noise. Repeat this phrase, let it sink into your subconscious. Feelings change. Standards don't. The amateur versus the professional. The great divide in humanity is not between the talented and the untalented. It is between the amateur and the professional. The amateur believes that they must feel like it to produce. They wait for the spark. They wait for the vibe. They treat their work as an extension of their ego. If they feel good, they work. If they feel bad, they quit. Because of this, the amateur is always starting over. They spend their life in a cycle of inspired bursts followed by guilt-ridden slumps. The professional, however, views work as a standard of existence. Consider a commercial airline pilot. Do you think a pilot wakes up, looks at the sky, and says, "I'm just not feeling the pilot energy today. I think I'll stay in bed"? No. They have a schedule. They have a checklist. They have a standard of professionalism that is completely detached from their personal mood. Consider a surgeon. When they walk into the operating room, they might be going through a divorce, they might be grieving a loss, or they might simply be exhausted. But they don't operate based on their vibe. They operate based on a set of protocols. To stay focused when motivation fades, you must become a professional in your own life. You must establish a set of non-negotiable standards. You must reach a point where your work is no longer optional. It is simply what you do. Building identity-based discipline. Most people fail at discipline because they treat it as an external punishment. They think of discipline as something they have to force themselves to do, like a diet they hate or a job they despise. This is compliance-based discipline, and it eventually breaks. The highest form of discipline is identity-based discipline. This is when you stop focusing on what you do and start focusing on who you are. When a behavior becomes part of your identity, it no longer requires willpower. Think about a non-smoker. If you offer a non-smoker a cigarette, they don't have to use willpower to say no. They don't have to look at a list of pros and cons. They simply say, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." Their identity dictates their behavior. It is effortless. You must apply this to your goals. Instead of saying, "I am trying to be disciplined," say, "I am a disciplined person." Instead of saying, "I am trying to finish this project," say, "I am the kind of person who finishes what they start." When you make this shift, you stop negotiating with yourself. You don't ask, "Should I work today?" Because the answer is already built into your identity. A finisher finishes. A disciplined person shows up. Every time you choose the work over the distraction, you are casting a vote for your new identity. You are providing your brain with evidence that the statement "I am a disciplined person" is the truth. Over time, the evidence becomes overwhelming, and the negotiation phase of your day disappears. The daily discipline formula. Discipline is not a grand, heroic act. It is not a once-in-a-lifetime decision. Discipline is a muscle that is built through small, unremarkable commitments repeated daily. If you try to build a massive amount of discipline all at once, you will snap like a rubber band that has been stretched too far. The key is to start with the minimum viable discipline. What is one tiny thing you can commit to doing every single day, no matter what? Writing 100 words. Doing 10 push-ups. Reading 5 pages. Making 1 sales call. The goal of this formula is not the output, it is the consistency. When you do something every single day without fail, You are training your brain to realize that your standards are more powerful than your mood. You are building the discipline muscle. Once you prove to yourself that you can do a small task regardless of your feelings, you can gradually increase the weight. Consistency compounds. A person who works with 50% intensity every single day will always outperform the person who works with 100% intensity once a week. The world belongs to the average people who are disciplined enough to never stop. The power of no negotiation. The greatest thief of focus is the internal negotiation. This is the conversation you have with yourself at 6 a.m. when the alarm goes off. I'll just sleep for 10 more minutes. I'll work twice as hard tomorrow. I've been working so hard lately, I deserve a break. The moment you begin to negotiate with your feelings, you have already lost. Why? Because your feelings are much better at arguing than your logic is. Your feelings know all your weaknesses. They know exactly which excuses you are most likely to believe. Disciplined people have a no-negotiation policy. They treat their schedule like a law, not a suggestion. When it is time to work, they don't check in with their inner child to see how they feel. They don't look at the weather. They don't evaluate their energy levels. They simply begin. By removing the choice, they remove the conflict. Imagine you are standing on the edge of a cold swimming pool. If you stand there and negotiate, thinking about how cold the water is, how warm the air is, and how much you don't want to get wet, you will eventually walk away. But if you simply jump, the negotiation is over. The shock is temporary, and within 60 seconds, you are swimming. Discipline is the jump. It is the act of bypassing the brain's negotiation phase and moving straight into action. Feelings change. Standards don't. Let's look at the standards of high achievers. Kobe Bryant didn't have a standard of practicing when he felt motivated. He had a standard of being in the gym at 4 a.m. Stephen King doesn't write when he feels the muse. He has a standard of writing 2,000 words a day, every day, including his birthday and holidays. Elon Musk doesn't build rockets because it's fun every day. He has a standard of solving problems regardless of the stress. These people have bad days. They have days where they feel depressed, uninspired, and overwhelmed. But because they have a standard, their output remains the same. Your standards are the floor of your life. They are the absolute minimum you are willing to accept from yourself. If you have no standards, your life will sink to the level of your lowest mood. But if you set high standards, your life will rise to meet them. If your standard is, I always finish my top 3 tasks before I check my phone, then that is who you are. The motivation can come and go, but the tasks will still get done. When you stop asking, how do I feel, and start asking, what is the standard, you become unstoppable. You have effectively automated your success, training the mind to ignore the why. When motivation fades, your brain will start asking why. Why am I doing this? Is it even worth it? Does anyone even care? This is a trap. The why is a luxury for the beginning and the end of a project. In the middle of the grind, the part that requires the most discipline, the why can actually be a distraction. In the heat of a battle, a soldier doesn't stop to contemplate the geopolitics of the war. They focus on the immediate objective. In the middle of a marathon, a runner doesn't think about the history of the race. They focus on the next step. When you are in the discipline zone, you must learn to shut down the why and focus on the how. Don't think about the mountain. Think about the step. Don't think about the finished book. Think about the current sentence. By narrowing your focus to the immediate action, you take the power away from your emotions. Your emotions want to look at the big, scary future. Discipline keeps your eyes on the ground, on the work, on the now. Summary of Chapter 2. Feelings are a terrible compass for a life of achievement. They are unstable, unreliable, and often flat-out lies. Discipline is the only permanent foundation for focus. To stay focused when motivation fades, you must fire your mood and higher your standards. You must shift your identity from someone who tries to someone who is. You must build the discipline muscle through small, daily commitments and adopt a no-negotiation policy with your internal excuses. The world doesn't care how you feel. The world only cares about what you deliver. Be the person who delivers regardless of the internal weather. Core lesson. Discipline is the decision to do what you hate to do, so you can live how you want to live. Core repetition. Feelings change. Standards don't. Chapter 3. Focus on the process, not the outcome. The poison of the finish line. Think back to the last time you started a major project. Perhaps it was a new fitness goal, a business venture, or learning a difficult skill. In those early moments, what were you thinking about? Most likely, you were picturing the result. You saw yourself standing on a stage, looking at a high bank balance, or seeing a transformed version of yourself in the mirror. We are a culture obsessed with the after photo. We crave the trophy, the applause, and the final paycheck. This is what we call outcome-oriented thinking, and while it feels inspiring at first, it is actually the poison that kills focus. When you focus solely on the outcome, you are constantly measuring the gap between where you are and where you want to be. On day 1, that gap is massive. On day 10, the gap is still massive. On day 30, the progress is often so small that the gap feels insurmountable. When you obsess over the result, you are living in a state of permanent dissatisfaction. You are telling yourself, I will be happy when I reach the goal, which means that right now, in the present moment, you are unhappy. This dissatisfaction creates a frustration debt. Eventually, the debt becomes too high, your motivation evaporates, and you quit. To stay focused when motivation fades, you must perform a radical mental shift. You must stop chasing the result and start falling in love with the process. You must learn the art of winning the day. The control principle, inputs versus outputs. The primary reason focusing on outcomes leads to failure is that outcomes are not entirely within your control. You can work incredibly hard on a business, but the market might shift. You can write a beautiful book, but a publisher might reject it. You can train for a race, but you might get a cold on the day of the event. When your happiness and focus are tied to an output, a result, you are at the mercy of the world. You are a gambler waiting for the dice to roll. And when the dice don't go your way, your focus shatters. Process-oriented thinking is about focusing on the inputs. The inputs are 100% within your control. You cannot control if you lose 10 pounds this month, but you can control what you put on your plate today. You cannot control if you get a promotion, but you can control the quality of the report you finish this afternoon. You cannot control if you become a famous artist, but you can control the hour you spend practicing your craft today. When you focus on the process, you remove the anxiety of the future. You stop worrying about things you cannot change and start mastering the things you can. There is a profound peace that comes with this shift. You no longer have to hope for success. You simply have to execute the process. Repeat this mantra until it becomes your operational philosophy. Win the day, and the future wins itself. The Archer's Wisdom. In ancient Zen philosophy, there is a famous teaching regarding the art of archery. The amateur archer focuses on the target. They stare at the bullseye, worrying about whether they will hit it, thinking about the prize they will win or the embarrassment they will feel if they miss. Because their mind is on the target, their hands shake, their breathing is uneven, and their release is jerky. They miss. The master archer focuses on the form. They focus on the position of their feet. They focus on the tension in the bowstring. They focus on the steady rhythm of their breath. They don't even look at the target as a goal. They see the bullseye as a natural consequence of perfect form. When the master archer releases the arrow, they are not surprised when it hits the center. It had to hit the center because the process was perfect. You must become the master archer of your own life. Stop staring at the bullseye. Stop checking your bank account every 5 minutes. Stop weighing yourself every morning. Those are targets. Instead, check your form. Did you follow the routine? Did you do the work? Did you maintain the standard? If the process is correct, the result is inevitable. You don't have to chase the future when you are building it correctly in the present. Breaking the dopamine debt. We talked in earlier chapters about how the brain craves dopamine. Outcome-oriented people only allow themselves a dopamine hit when they reach the big goal. But because big goals take months or years to achieve, their brains go into dopamine starvation. This is why people quit during the messy middle. Their brain is screaming, "We've been working for 3 weeks and we haven't reached the destination yet. This isn't worth it." To keep your focus sharp, you must switch to a system of micro-wins. A micro-win is a victory based purely on the process. It is a win that you can claim every single day. Writing for 30 minutes is a win. Completing your to-do list is a win. Showing up to the gym when you're tired is a win. When you define success as following the process, you get to feel like a winner every single day. This creates a constant, steady stream of dopamine that keeps your brain engaged and focused. You are no longer working for a distant reward. The work itself becomes the reward. When you win enough days in a row, you build a momentum that is impossible to stop. The big, final result eventually arrives, but by the time it does, you've already been a winner for months. The trap of obsessing over progress. One of the most common focus killers is the habit of constantly measuring progress. Imagine you are planting a garden. You put the seeds in the dirt, you water them, and then you stand there and wait. 5 minutes pass. You dig up the seed to see if it's growing yet. Of course, it isn't. By digging it up, you've actually destroyed the growth. Many people do this with their goals. They work for 2 days and then check their stats. They look for signs that it's working. When they don't see massive change immediately, they get discouraged and change their strategy, or they quit entirely. Focus requires patience, and patience is only possible when you trust the process. Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. A tree doesn't try to grow 10 feet in a day. It simply follows the process of photosynthesis and cellular division, day after day, year after year. You must develop a biological patience. Trust that if you put in the right inputs, the outputs will grow in their own time. Your only job is to water the seeds today. Repeat the mantra, win the day, and the future wins itself. Creating process predictability. One of the reasons motivation fades is uncertainty. When we don't know how we are going to reach a goal, our brain feels anxious and seeks distraction. The outcome is often unpredictable, but the process is predictable. If you say, "I want to be a millionaire," that is an unpredictable goal. There are 1,000 variables you can't see. But if you say, "I will save $20 a day and spend 2 hours a day building my side business," that is predictable. You know exactly what you need to do at 6 p.m. tonight. A predictable process creates a mental rail for your focus to slide along. It removes the need for decision-making. You don't have to wake up and ask, "What should I do today to get closer to my goal?" That question is too big and it leads to paralysis. Instead, you wake up and say, "It is 7 a.m. Time for the first step of the process." By automating your actions through a process, you conserve your cognitive energy. You don't waste willpower on deciding to work, you spend your energy on doing the work. The beauty of the unremarkable day. We are conditioned by movies to think that success is about the big moment. The climactic battle. The last-second shot. The aha moment. In reality, success is built on the unremarkable day. It is the Tuesday afternoon where nothing special happens, you don't feel particularly inspired, and no one is watching, but you do the work anyway. It is the boring, repetitive, quiet execution of the process. Finishers are people who have learned to find a strange kind of beauty in the unremarkable. They find satisfaction in the clink of one brick being laid on top of another. They don't need the rush of the finish line to keep them going because they have mastered the hum of the machine. When you stop looking for excitement and start looking for rhythm, you become dangerous. A person who needs excitement to work will always be outperformed by the person who has found a rhythm in the mundane. The Win the Day scorecard. To implement this in your life, you need a new way to measure yourself. Stop using a goal list and start using a process scorecard. At the end of every day, ask yourself one question: did I win the day? Winning the day doesn't mean you were perfect. It doesn't mean you achieved your 10-year goal. It means you completed the 3 or 4 critical process tasks you set for yourself. If you did the work, you won. If you didn't do the work, you lost. It is a binary system. There is no almost. If you lose a day, you don't beat yourself up. You don't try to make it up by doing double the work tomorrow, which leads to burnout. You simply wake up the next morning and focus on winning that day. If you can win 5 days out of 7, you are moving faster than 90% of the population. If you can win 6 days out of 7, you are elite. If you can win 7 days out of 7 for a month, you will be shocked at how much the outcome has moved toward you without you even looking at it. The future is a destination that doesn't exist yet. The only thing that is real is the next 24 hours. If you take care of the hours, the years will take care of themselves. Transitioning from what to how. When you find your focus slipping, it is usually because you are thinking about the what, the big, scary, distant goal. The moment you feel that fade, bring your focus back to the how. How can I make this next sentence better? How can I finish this next rep with perfect form? How can I make this next hour of work the most focused hour of my week? By shrinking your world down to the how, you make the task manageable. You turn a mountain into a series of steps. You turn a marathon into a series of breaths. The focus of a master is always micro. They are obsessed with the details of the process. They know that the big win is just a collection of small wins that stayed together long enough to become something great. Summary of Chapter 3. Outcomes are distractions. They create anxiety, frustration, and a sense of lack. To stay focused when motivation fades, you must shift your gaze from the finish line to the path beneath your feet. Understand that you can only control your inputs. Trust the archer's wisdom and focus on your form. Use micro-wins to keep your brain's dopamine levels steady and build a predictable process that removes the need for willpower. Stop waiting for the big moment and start mastering the unremarkable day. If you can learn to love the process, the result will find you. Core lesson: success is not an event, it is a pattern. Focus on the pattern, and the event will take care of itself. Core repetition: win the day, and the future wins itself. Chapter 4. Eliminate the noise that kills focus. The war for your mind. We live in the most distracted era in human history. Every time you pick up your phone, open a browser tab, or glance at a notification, you are participating in a war. This isn't a war fought with soldiers and tanks. It is a war fought for your attention. On the other side of your screen are the world's most brilliant engineers, psychologists, and data scientists. Their entire job is to figure out how to pull you away from your work and keep you scrolling for just 5 more minutes. They have spent billions of dollars to understand your brain's vulnerabilities. They know exactly which colors, sounds, and social pings will trigger a dopamine release in your mind. When you struggle to stay focused, it is not just because you lack discipline. It is because you are bringing a knife to a gunfight. You are trying to use your limited willpower to fight against a global infrastructure designed to distract you. Focus is no longer something that just happens. Focus is something you must defend. In an age of infinite noise, the ability to concentrate is the new superpower. If you cannot control your attention, you cannot control your life. To stay focused when motivation fades, you must stop being a victim of the distraction epidemic and start becoming an architect of your environment. The cognitive tax, the cost of just a second. Most people believe that a small distraction, like checking a text message for 5 seconds, only costs them 5 seconds. This is a massive, dangerous lie. In psychology, there is a concept called attention residue. When you switch your focus from a deep task, like writing a report, to a shallow task, like checking an email, a part of your brain stays stuck on the previous task. Your mind does not flip like a light switch. It moves like a slow-moving train. Research shows that it can take up to 23 minutes to fully regain deep focus after a single interruption. Think about the math of your day. If you check your phone every 15 minutes, you are effectively living in a state of permanent cognitive fog. You never actually reach the state of deep work. You are paying a cognitive tax on everything you do. You are working at 50% of your actual intelligence because your brain is fragmented. Focus is not about doing more things. It's about removing the things that prevent you from doing the one thing. Every notification you turn off, every tab you close, and every person you tell not now is an investment in your brain's power. Repeat this truth until it becomes your shield. Protect your focus, or someone else will steal it. Focus as a finite resource. Your brain is an organ, just like your muscles. And just like your muscles, your brain has a limited amount of energy to spend each day. Every time you make a decision, even a tiny one like should I click this link, you are burning a bit of your cognitive energy. This is known as decision fatigue. In the morning, your energy is high. You feel capable of focus. But as the day goes on, and you navigate hundreds of tiny distractions, your focus reservoir begins to drain. By the time 3 p.m. rolls around, you aren't quitting because the work is too hard. You are quitting because your brain is out of gas. If you want to stay focused when motivation fades, you cannot afford to waste your energy on noise. Noise is anything that doesn't move you closer to your goal. It is the news cycle you can't control. It is the gossip in the office. It is the comparison you feel when looking at someone else's perfect life on Instagram. Noise is a leak in your bucket. You can try to pour more motivation into the bucket, but if you don't plug the holes, you will always end up empty. Willpower is a bad strategy. The biggest mistake people make is relying on willpower to stay focused. They leave their phone on the desk, right next to them, and say, "I'll just be disciplined enough not to look at it." This is a losing strategy. Using willpower to resist temptation is like trying to hold your breath underwater. You can do it for a while, but eventually, biology takes over and you have to gasp for air. Every second you spend resisting the urge to check your phone is a second you are not spending on your work. You are burning your focus just to keep yourself from being distracted. The elite don't use willpower. They use environment design. If you want to stop eating junk food, you don't keep cookies on the counter and try to be disciplined. You throw the cookies in the trash so that you don't have to make a decision at all. You must do the same with your focus. You must remove the temptation entirely. Put your phone in another room. Not in your pocket. Not in your drawer. In another room. Use website blockers to lock yourself out of social media during work hours. Clear your physical desk. A cluttered desk creates a cluttered mind. Your environment should make it easy to work and hard to be distracted. When you design your environment correctly, discipline becomes automatic. You don't have to feel focused if there is nothing else for your brain to do but the task at hand. Digital minimalism. Cleaning the slate. We have become digital hoarders. We have 100 apps we don't use, 1,000 emails we haven't deleted, and 50 browser tabs that have been open for a week. This digital clutter creates a constant weight on our subconscious. To master the art of focus, you must practice digital minimalism. Start with your notifications. Most people have their phone set to alert them for everything: likes, comments, news, sales, emails. This is madness. You are giving every app developer in the world permission to interrupt your thoughts whenever they want. Turn off all non-human notifications. If it isn't a phone call or a direct text from a real person, you don't need a buzzing sensation in your pocket. You should check your apps on your schedule, not theirs. Next, clean your digital workspace. At the end of every day, close every tab. Delete the files on your desktop. Treat your computer like a professional kitchen. Clean the station before you leave so that when you arrive tomorrow, you can start cooking immediately. Noise thrives in chaos. Focus thrives in simplicity. The comparison trap. Social noise. Not all noise is digital. Some noise is social. One of the greatest killers of motivation and focus is the habit of comparison. We live in a world where we see everyone else's highlight reel while we are living our behind the scenes. When you see someone else's finished result, their success, their body, their travel, your brain registers that as noise. It distracts you from your own process. You start to question if your work is enough. You feel a sense of FOMO, fear of missing out, that pulls your attention away from your current task. To stay focused, you must put on your blinders. In horse racing, horses often wear blinders so they can only see the track in front of them. If they could see the other horses running next to them, they might get spooked or distracted and lose their stride. You need mental blinders. Your only competition is the version of yourself that existed yesterday. What anyone else is doing, how fast they are moving, what they are achieving, is noise. It has nothing to do with your process. It has nothing to do with your win the day. Repeat the mantra, Protect your focus, or someone else will steal it. Creating the deep work sanctuary. If you want to do world-class work, you need a world-class environment. You need a sanctuary of focus. This is a physical space where your brain knows that only one thing happens: work. If you work on your bed, your brain is confused. It doesn't know if it should be sleeping or focusing. If you work at the dining table where you eat and socialize, your brain is distracted by those associations. If possible, have a dedicated chair, a dedicated desk, or even a dedicated pair of headphones that you only use for deep work. This creates a trigger. When you sit in that chair or put on those headphones, you are signaling to your nervous system that it is time to narrow the gaze. Furthermore, you must train the people around you. You must set boundaries. Let your family, your roommates, or your co-workers know, when I am in this space or wearing these headphones, I am in deep focus. Do not interrupt me unless the house is on fire. It may feel mean at first, but it is actually an act of respect. Respect for your time, your goals, and your potential. The people who truly care about you will respect your need for silence. The power of single tasking. The modern world celebrates multitasking as a badge of honor. We think it makes us productive to have a meeting while answering emails and eating lunch. The truth: multitasking is a myth. The human brain cannot do two cognitively demanding things at once. What you are actually doing is task switching, bouncing your attention back and forth at high speeds. This is incredibly draining. It lowers your IQ by 10 points, the equivalent of losing a full night of sleep. Multitasking is just another form of noise. It is the noise of a shallow life. Finishers are single taskers. They do one thing with 100% of their intensity until it is done, or until their scheduled time is up. They don't have 5 projects open, they have one. They don't have 10 thoughts competing for their attention, they have one. When you do one thing at a time, you move faster. You make fewer mistakes. You reach a state of flow where time seems to disappear. Focus is not a wide beam, it is a laser. And a laser only cuts when it is concentrated on a single point. Cleaning the internal noise. Finally, we must address the noise inside your head. Sometimes, even in a silent room with no phone, we can't focus because our minds are racing. We are worried about the future, guilty about the past, or trying to remember a list of things we need to do. The solution to internal noise is a brain dump. Before you start your deep work, take 2 minutes to write down everything that is bothering you or everything you need to remember. Get it out of your head and onto paper. Your brain will stop looping on those thoughts because it knows they are safely recorded. By clearing the internal noise, you create empty space for your work to fill. You give your focus a clean canvas to paint on. Summary of Chapter 4. Noise is the enemy of achievement. To stay focused when motivation fades, you must realize that your attention is being hunted and you must defend it at all costs. Stop relying on willpower. Instead, design your environment to make distraction difficult. Eliminate digital clutter, turn off notifications, and put your phone in another room. Practice digital minimalism and put on social blinders to avoid the comparison trap. Build a sanctuary for your work, embrace the power of single tasking, and clear your internal noise through a daily brain dump. The world is loud, and it is getting louder. The people who can find the silence, the people who can eliminate the noise, are the ones who will own the future. Core lesson: focus is not about what you say yes to, it is about what you say no to. Eliminate the noise, and the music of your work will finally be heard. Core repetition: protect your focus, or someone else will steal it. Chapter 5. Master the art of boring consistency. The high price of the mundane. If you were to watch a movie about the life of a world-class achiever, the directors would show you a montage. They would show the athlete lifting weights for 3 seconds, the writer drinking coffee for 2 seconds, and the entrepreneur shaking hands for another 2 seconds, all set to an inspiring, high-tempo soundtrack. In a matter of 90 seconds, years of hard work are condensed into a thrilling, fast-paced sequence of progress. This is the great deception of our culture. We have been conditioned to believe that the path to success is a series of exciting breakthroughs and high-adrenaline aha moments. We think that focus is easy when the work is exciting. But here is the truth that no one likes to admit. Most progress is profoundly, deeply, and agonizingly boring. Mastery is not a series of highlights. Mastery is the ability to do the exact same thing for the 10,000th time, with the same level of care and precision as the first time. It is the ability to show up to the unremarkable Tuesday and do the work when there is no music playing, no crowd cheering, and no immediate reward in sight. To stay focused when motivation fades, you must stop looking for excitement and start mastering the art of boring consistency. You must learn to fall in love with the grind. Success is repetition, not excitement. We live in a novelty-addicted society. We are constantly searching for the new strategy, the new workout, or the new hack that will unlock our potential. We mistake newness for progress. In reality, most of what works is incredibly old and incredibly simple. If you want to be healthy, you eat whole foods and move your body every day. If you want to be wealthy, you spend less than you earn and invest consistently for decades. If you want to be a master of your craft, you practice the basics until they become an unconscious reflex. The problem isn't that we don't know what to do. The problem is that we find the doing too repetitive. We get bored. We think, there must be a more exciting way. And in our search for excitement, we abandon the very habits that were actually working. The elite understand that boredom is the filter of greatness. They know that most people will quit simply because the task has become repetitive. Therefore, they treat boredom as a competitive advantage. They don't look for a new way. They look for a deeper way to perform the same action. Repeat this phrase until it is etched into your identity. Mastery is repetition. Why people quit during the plateau? Imagine you are heating an ice cube. It is 25 degrees. You heat it to 26, 27, 28. Nothing happens. 29, 30, 31. Still, the ice cube sits there. To the naked eye, it looks like you are failing. It looks like your effort is being wasted. But then, you hit 32 degrees. Suddenly, the ice begins to melt. A 1-degree shift, the same shift you made from 25 to 26, has created a massive physical transformation. The 25 to 31 degree range is what we call the plateau of latent potential. This is where most people quit. When you start a new goal, you expect progress to be linear, a straight line moving up. But real progress is delayed. You put in work, day after day, and you see no results. You are in the boring zone. Because you don't see the melt, you assume your focus is misplaced. You think, the motivation is gone, and nothing is happening. I should stop. But the work isn't being wasted, it is being stored. Consistency is about trusting that the heat you are applying today is necessary for the melt that will happen tomorrow. If you stop at 31 degrees, you have wasted all the previous effort. The only way to reach the breakthrough is to master the art of showing up when nothing is happening. Focus is the ability to keep the heat on even when the ice hasn't moved yet. Consistency over intensity. We have a toxic obsession with intensity. We love the stories of the entrepreneur who worked 40 hours straight or the athlete who trained until they collapsed. We think that intensity is the secret to focus. But intensity is a sprint. Consistency is a marathon. If you work with 100% intensity for 3 days and then burn out and do nothing for 2 weeks, you have achieved less than the person who worked with 20% intensity every single day. Intensity is often an ego-driven attempt to make up for a lack of consistency. We try to cram for our goals the same way we tried to cram for exams in school. But the biological laws of growth do not recognize cramming. You cannot cram a garden into growing in a weekend. You cannot cram a body into fitness in a day. The consistent producer understands that moderation is the key to longevity. They don't work until they hate the task. They work until they have met their daily standard, and then they stop, leaving a little bit of hunger for the next day. This allows them to show up again on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. By working moderately but never missing a day, they build a compound effect that eventually dwarfs the intense person's results. Repeat the mantra, mastery is repetition. The Stonecutter's Lesson. There is a famous quote by social reformer Jacob Riis that perfectly illustrates the power of boring consistency. When nothing seems to help, I go and look at a stonecutter hammering away at his rock, perhaps 100 times without as much as a crack showing in it. Yet at the 101st blow, it will split in two, and I know it was not that last blow that did it, but all that had gone before. When you are in the middle of your work, when you are typing that email, making that call, or practicing that scale, you are the stonecutter. Each day is a blow of the hammer. Most days, you will look at the rock and see no crack. You will feel like your focus is meaningless. But the final blow, the breakthrough, the finished project, the success, is only possible because of the 99 boring blows that came before it. Success is not the split in the rock. Success is the persistence to keep hitting the rock when there is no sign of a crack. If you can learn to take pride in the strike rather than the split, you will never lose your focus. The psychological benefit of boredom. In the modern world, we treat boredom as a problem to be solved with a smartphone. We have lost the ability to sit with the mundane. But boredom is actually a vital component of deep work. When you allow yourself to be bored by the repetitive nature of your task, your brain enters a different state. You move past the surface-level excitement and into the deep-level mastery. Think about a master craftsman. They have sanded the same piece of wood for hours. They aren't looking for excitement. They are listening to the sound of the sandpaper. They are feeling the grain with their fingers. They have entered a state of active meditation. When you stop fighting boredom and start embracing it, you find a hidden rhythm in the work. You find that the repetitive nature of the task actually allows your mind to settle. You stop chasing and start being. The person who can sit with the boring parts of their goal the longest is the person who will eventually produce the most exceptional work. In an age of infinite distraction, your ability to tolerate boredom is a massive competitive advantage. Building a boring routine. If you rely on your imagination or creative spark to get to work, you will be inconsistent. To stay focused when motivation fades, you must turn your work into a routine. A routine is a series of boring steps that lead to a productive result. Step 1. Sit in the same chair at the same time. Step 2. Open the same software or tool. Step 3. Perform the same starting ritual, like a cup of tea or a specific song. Step 4. Do the work. By making the start of your work boring and predictable, you lower the activation energy required to begin. You don't have to think about what to do. You just follow the routine. The greatest artists and thinkers in history were notoriously boring in their daily lives. They ate the same breakfast, walked the same route, and worked the same hours. They automated the mundane so they could focus their creative energy on the work itself. They mastered the art of boring consistency so their results could be extraordinary. Breaking the novelty trap. We often quit a process right before it starts to work because we are bored and we want to try something new. This is the novelty trap. You see it in fitness all the time. Someone starts a strength program. For 4 weeks, they get stronger. Then, the progress slows down. It becomes boring. They see an ad for a new high-intensity workout or a new diet. They jump ship. They start over at day 1 of the new program. By the time the new program gets boring, they jump again. They spend years as a beginner in 10 different things, rather than becoming a master in one. To stay focused, you must make a commitment to the boring. You must decide that you will stay with your current process until it is finished, regardless of how unexciting it becomes. Recognize that the itch to try something new is usually just your brain trying to escape the hard work of the plateau. Repeat the mantra. Mastery is repetition. The reward of the long game. Boring consistency is the only path to true confidence. When you are consistent, you build a reputation with yourself. You know that you are the kind of person who shows up. This internal trust is worth more than any external result. A person who works in bursts of motivation never truly trusts themselves because they know their output is tied to their mood. But the person who is boringly consistent knows that they can deliver results even on their worst day. This is the long game mindset. You aren't working for the rush of today. You are working for the monument of tomorrow. You are building a life, not a highlight reel. When you look at your work today and you feel that familiar sense of boredom, smile. It means you are in the mastery zone. It means you are doing the work that the amateurs are currently quitting. It means you are one strike closer to splitting the rock. Summary of Chapter 5. Success is not a grand explosion of excitement. It is the quiet, repetitive hum of consistency. To stay focused when motivation fades, you must realize that the boring middle is where the actual growth happens. Stop chasing intensity and start valuing moderation. Understand the stonecutter's lesson. Every unremarkable action is storing potential for a future breakthrough. Turn your work into a routine to remove the need for inspiration, and be wary of the novelty trap that keeps you a perpetual beginner. The path to the top is paved with boring days. If you can master the mundane, you can achieve the impossible. Core lesson: the most important work you will ever do is the work you do when you are bored. Core repetition: mastery is repetition. Chapter 6. Train your mind to ignore resistance. The invisible wall. Imagine you are about to start a task that truly matters. You sit down, you have your coffee, you have your plan. But the moment you reach for the keyboard or the tool, something happens. You feel a strange, heavy pressure in your chest. Your mind suddenly feels foggy. An intense urge to do anything else washes over you. Suddenly, you feel a desperate need to check the news, clean your desk, or research a topic that has nothing to do with your goal. This is not a lack of talent. It is not a lack of character. It is a universal force that author Stephen Pressfield calls resistance. Resistance is like gravity for the soul. It is an invisible, silent, and destructive force that arises the moment you attempt to move from a lower state to a higher state, from a state of thinking to a state of doing. Resistance is the voice that whispers, "Not now, you're not good enough, and this can wait until tomorrow." To stay focused when motivation fades, you must realize that resistance is not an accident. It is a biological and psychological reflex. And if you do not train your mind to ignore it, it will govern your entire life. You must learn to see the wall not as a stop sign, but as a go sign. The biological root of resistance. Why does the mind fight us when we try to do something great? To find the answer, we have to look at the lizard brain, the amygdala. Your brain evolved over millions of years with one primary objective: homeostasis. Homeostasis is the maintenance of a stable, unchanging state. To your primitive brain, change represents a threat. If you are safe, fed, and warm right now, your brain wants you to stay exactly where you are. When you decide to write a book, launch a business, or transform your body, you are threatening the status quo. You are stepping into the unknown. Your brain perceives this as a danger, and it responds by triggering a mild fight or flight response. It creates a feeling of anxiety and restlessness to drive you back toward the safety of comfort and distraction. Resistance is simply your brain's way of trying to save your life from a danger that doesn't exist. Once you realize that the urge to quit is just a biological glitch, you can stop taking it so seriously. You can acknowledge the feeling without obeying the command. Repeat this principle until it becomes your armor. The harder the resistance, the more important the task. The voice of the saboteur, a lawyer for your laziness. Resistance does not speak to you in a monster's voice. It speaks to you in your voice. It uses your own logic, your own fears, and your own vocabulary against you. It acts like a world-class lawyer, arguing for your laziness with incredible sophistication. It doesn't say, "I want to fail." It says, "I want to do a perfect job, and I'm just not ready yet." It doesn't say, "I'm lazy." It says, "I'm burnt out and I need to prioritize my self-care." It doesn't say, "I'm scared." It says, "This isn't the right market for this idea." If you try to argue with resistance, you will lose. Resistance has been living in your head your entire life. It knows every one of your buttons. It knows exactly which excuse you are most likely to believe at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. To stay focused, you must adopt a no-argument policy. When the voice of resistance appears, do not try to reason with it. Do not try to prove it wrong. Simply recognize it. Say to yourself, there is resistance. It's trying to stop me because I'm doing something important. Then, turn your attention back to the work. Treat the voice like background noise, like the hum of an air conditioner or the sound of traffic. It's there, but it has no power over your hands. Mental toughness through exposure. We often think that mental toughness is something people are born with. We see the elite athlete who never quits and think they have a special gift. In reality, mental toughness is a result of exposure. Think of your mind like the skin on your hands. If you never do manual labor, your skin is soft and easily blistered. But if you work with your hands every day, you develop callus. The work that used to cause pain now causes nothing, because the skin has become tough through repeated exposure to friction. Every time you feel the itch to check your phone and you don't, you are callousing your mind. Every time you feel the wall of boredom and you work for 10 more minutes, you are making your focus muscles stronger. Mental toughness is the ability to sit in the fire of resistance without running for the ice of distraction. Most people have zero tolerance for resistance. The moment they feel a bit of friction, they bail. By contrast, the high achiever has built up such a high tolerance that they can work through hours of resistance without even blinking. They aren't special, they are just calloused. The 5-minute rule, hacking the start. The strongest point of resistance is always at the beginning. Physicists know that static friction, the force required to get a stationary object moving, is always higher than kinetic friction, the force required to keep it moving. This is why the hardest part of a workout is putting on your shoes. The hardest part of writing is the blank page. To bypass this initial peak of resistance, you must use the 5-minute rule. Tell yourself, I'm going to work on this task for exactly 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, I have full permission to quit. This works because it lowers the threat level in your brain. Your lizard brain is terrified of a 4-hour work session, but it can handle 5 minutes. You are essentially tricking your brain into letting you start. What happens 90% of the time? Once you have started, the resistance vanishes. You've overcome the static friction. You've found a rhythm. The 5-minute commitment turns into an hour of deep work. And even on the days when you do quit after 5 minutes, you've still won, because you've reinforced the habit of showing up despite the resistance. Repeat the mantra, the harder the resistance, the more important the task. The wall is the filter. To stay focused when motivation fades, you must change your relationship with difficulty. Most people see the wall of resistance as a sign that they should stop. They think, if this was meant to be, it wouldn't be this hard. This is exactly backward. In the world of high achievement, the wall is a filter. The wall is there to keep out everyone who doesn't want it enough. It is there to separate the talkers from the doers, the amateurs from the professionals. If the task was easy, everyone would do it, and it would have no value. The difficulty is the very thing that creates the value. When you hit a moment of intense resistance, where you feel like you literally cannot keep going, you should be excited. Why? Because most of your competition is quitting at that exact same moment. If you can push through that wall, you will find yourself in a space where very few people exist. The resistance is the price of admission for a great life. If you aren't feeling resistance, it means you aren't doing anything that matters. Embrace the friction. It means you're moving. Identifying the internal resistance patterns. Everyone has a unique flavor of resistance. To train your mind, you must become a student of your own sabotage. The procrastinator, their resistance shows up as productive procrastination. They clean the whole house to avoid writing one email. The perfectionist, their resistance shows up as infinite tweaking. They never finish the project because they are afraid of it being judged, so they keep improving it forever. The pessimist, their resistance shows up as cynicism. They tell themselves the project will fail anyway, so why bother? What is your pattern? When you feel the urge to stop, what is the specific thought that usually wins? Once you name the pattern, you take away its power. It moves from being an unconscious impulse to being a conscious observation. You can see the thought coming and say, "Oh, there's my perfectionism again. Nice try, but I'm finishing this anyway." Using negative visualization as a tool. Sometimes, to ignore the quit voice, you need to look at the consequences of quitting. When resistance tells you to take the night off, perform a quick mental exercise. Imagine yourself 6 months from now. Imagine that you listen to that voice every single day. Look at your life. Look at your bank account. Look at your health. Look at the regret in your eyes because you are in the exact same place you are today. Now, imagine the opposite. Imagine you ignored the voice. Imagine you worked through the resistance every day for those 6 months. Look at the progress. Look at the pride. The pain of discipline is temporary. The pain of regret is permanent. When you compare the discomfort of working to the misery of being a quitter, the work suddenly feels much easier. You realize that resistance is trying to rob you of your future self. Don't let it. The standard over the state. As we discussed in earlier chapters, discipline is about following a standard regardless of your state. When resistance is high, your state is one of discomfort, boredom, or fear. If you let your state dictate your actions, you will stop. The mind training secret is to focus entirely on the standard. The standard is, I write 1,000 words before lunch. The standard is, I do not leave the gym until the program is finished. The standard is, I make 10 calls before I check social media. When you focus on the standard, the resistance becomes irrelevant. It doesn't matter how high the resistance is, because the standard is non-negotiable. You aren't deciding to work, you are simply following the law. Think of resistance as a toddler having a tantrum in the backseat of your car. The toddler can scream, kick, and cry. But you are the driver. You don't pull over and cancel the trip just because the toddler is upset. You keep driving. Eventually, the toddler gets tired and falls asleep. Resistance is the same. If you keep working, eventually the resistance gives up. It realizes that you aren't going to listen, so it goes quiet. This is the state of flow, the reward for those who refuse to quit. Breaking the emergency habit. Resistance loves to create false emergencies. The moment you sit down to focus, your brain suddenly remembers that you forgot to reply to a very important text message. Or it tells you that you should check your bank balance right now just to be safe. These are not emergencies. These are distractions disguised as necessities. To train your mind, you must practice selective neglect. You must be willing to let the small things burn while you focus on the big things. If the text message can wait an hour, let it wait. If the laundry isn't done, let it sit. Focus is the ability to say no to the urgent so that you can say yes to the important. Resistance will try to make the urgent feel like a matter of life and death. It isn't. Stay in the chair. Summary of Chapter 6. Resistance is a biological force designed to keep you safe and stagnant. It is the greatest enemy of your potential, and it will use your own voice to talk you out of your goals. To stay focused when motivation fades, you must stop arguing with your excuses and start ignoring them. Understand that mental toughness is built through repeated exposure to friction. Use the 5-minute rule to hack the start, and view the wall of resistance as a filter that eliminates your competition. Identify your sabotage patterns and use the standard to override your internal state. Remember, resistance is strongest when you are close to a breakthrough. When it feels like you can't go on, you are exactly where you need to be. Core lesson: resistance is a liar. The work you most want to avoid is the work you most need to do. Core repetition: the harder the resistance, the more important the task. Chapter 7. Detach from motivation cycles. The surfer and the tide. Imagine a surfer standing on the beach, looking out at the horizon. The ocean is not a flat, unchanging surface. It moves in cycles. There are moments of high, powerful waves, and there are moments where the water is dead calm. A professional surfer does not get angry at the ocean when the waves disappear. They do not sit on their board and cry, wondering what they did wrong to make the ocean lose interest in them. They understand that the ocean operates in cycles. They know that the tide will go out, and eventually, the tide will come back in. Most people treat motivation like a faucet that should always be on. When they feel motivated, they feel like superheroes. They work 10 hours straight, they make big plans, and they believe they will feel this way forever. But the moment the tide of motivation goes out, which it inevitably does, they panic. They feel like they've lost their spark. They think they are failing. To stay focused when motivation fades, you must detach yourself from the motivation cycle. You must stop being a victim of the waves and start being a master of the tides. You must realize that feeling uninspired is not a sign of failure, It is a predictable biological event. The biological clock. Why you crash. We like to think of ourselves as logical, consistent beings. But biologically, we are a cocktail of fluctuating hormones, neurochemicals, and energy levels. Your motivation is deeply tied to your circadian rhythm, the internal clock that regulates your sleep-wake cycle. Throughout a 24-hour period, your body temperature, cortisol levels, and alertness rise and fall in a predictable pattern. For most people, there is a peak of energy in the mid-morning, a significant dip in the early afternoon, the post-lunch slump, and a secondary, smaller peak in the early evening. When you hit that 2 p.m. slump and your focus shatters, it is usually not a lack of willpower. It is your body's core temperature dropping and your brain's glucose levels dipping. If you try to fight this biological reality with motivation, you will fail. It's like trying to shout at the sun to stay in the sky. The high achiever doesn't fight the cycle, they design around it. They know that their high motivation self is a different person than their low motivation self. To stay focused, you must learn to navigate the geography of your own energy. The geography of your energy. High mind versus low mind. To manage your focus, you must categorize your daily tasks into two groups: deep work and shallow work. Deep work requires your high mind. These are tasks that demand intense concentration, creativity, and problem-solving. This is the work that actually moves the needle on your goals. Shallow work requires your low mind. These are administrative tasks, answering emails, filing, organizing, or tidying up. These tasks are necessary but don't require your best cognitive energy. The mistake most people make is trying to do deep work when their motivation is at a biological low. They try to write their masterpiece at 3 p.m. when their brain is in a fog. When they struggle, they feel unmotivated and they quit. The strategy of the finisher is to match the task to the tide. During your peak, you do the hardest, most painful, most creative work. You ignore your phone, you ignore your emails, and you protect that time like it is gold. During your trough, you do the mindless work. You don't need motivation to answer a simple email or organize your desk. When you detach from the cycle, you stop expecting yourself to be a genius 24 hours a day. You accept that you will have stupid hours and brilliant hours, and you plan accordingly. Repeat this principle: systems beat motivation. The trap of decision fatigue. Every decision you make, from what to wear to what to eat to which email to answer first, burns a tiny bit of your willpower battery. This is known as decision fatigue. As the day goes on, your battery drains. By the time evening arrives, your ability to focus is physically depleted. This is why most people ruin their diets or skip their workouts in the evening. They aren't weak, they have simply run out of decision-making fuel. If you rely on motivation to decide what to do next, you are wasting your precious energy on the decision rather than the action. The finisher removes the need for decision-making through automation. They decide their workout clothes the night before. They decide their top 3 tasks before they go to sleep. They follow a strict routine that dictates exactly what they do in the first 2 hours of the day. When your life is governed by a system, you don't need to feel like it to get started. The system tells you it's time to work, so you work. You have effectively automated your discipline, leaving your motivation free to be used for the creative work itself. The Valley of Despair. Expecting the lows. Every long-term project has a cycle of emotional tides. Informed optimism. The beginning. Everything is exciting. You are certain you will succeed. Informed pessimism. You realize how hard the work actually is. The honeymoon phase is over. The Valley of Despair. This is the low point of the cycle. The results are slow, the work is boring, and your motivation is at absolute zero. 90% of people quit in the Valley of Despair. They think the loss of feeling means the goal is no longer right for them. But the finisher knows that the Valley of Despair is a mandatory checkpoint. You cannot reach the finish line without passing through the valley. When you detach from the motivation cycle, you expect to feel like quitting. You expect the work to feel meaningless for a while. Because you expected the low, it doesn't surprise you. It doesn't have power over you. You say, "Oh, here is the Valley of Despair. I remember reading about this. This is the part where I just keep walking until I reach the other side. Focus is the ability to maintain the pace of the peak while you are in the trough. Repeat the mantra, systems beat motivation. The schedule as a contract. If you work based on a to-do list, you are still a victim of motivation. Why? Because a to-do list is a list of options. When you look at the list, your brain asks, which of these do I feel like doing right now? Usually, the answer is none of them. The finisher works based on a schedule. A schedule is not a list of options. It is a contract. When you put a task on a schedule, 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., write Chapter 7, you have removed the motivation variable. It doesn't matter if you feel inspired at 10 a.m. It only matters that it is 10 a.m. Professional athletes don't have a to-do list for practice. They have a schedule. They show up because the clock says it's time. By time blocking your day, you create containers for your focus. Within that container, you have only one job, the task at hand. You aren't allowed to check your phone, you aren't allowed to research something else, and you aren't allowed to quit. You sit in the container until the time is up. A schedule is the ultimate system because it detaches your output from your emotions. It treats your time with the respect it deserves. The motivation myth of variety. Resistance often tries to trick us by suggesting that we need variety to stay motivated. It tells us that we're bored because the process is too repetitive, and that we should try a new approach to find our spark again. This is almost always a lie. True focus is found in consistency, not variety. If you constantly change your system to try and find a motivation high, you will never build momentum. Think of a steam engine. To get a train moving, you have to build up an incredible amount of heat and pressure. If you keep turning the fire off to try a different kind of coal or rearrange the pipes, the pressure drops and the train stops. To stay focused, you must stay with one system long enough for it to work. You must be willing to be boring for as long as it takes to be successful. Don't look for a new way to work. Look for a better way to stay in the work you already have. The biological restart. When you are in a deep motivation trough and your focus is completely gone, sometimes the best strategy is not to push through but to reset your biology. If your brain is stuck, it's often because of a buildup of adenosine, the chemical that makes you feel tired, or a lack of oxygen. Instead of staring at your screen and feeling guilty, which burns more energy, use a biological reset system. Movement. 5 minutes of intense movement, jumping jacks, a fast walk, to flush your system with oxygen. Hydration. Drinking 16 ounces of water. Most brain fog is actually mild dehydration. Cold exposure. Splashing cold water on your face. This triggers the mammalian dive reflex, which lowers your heart rate and resets your nervous system. These aren't hacks to find motivation. They are maintenance for the machine. Once the machine is reset, you return to the schedule, not to the feeling. The power of leaning into the lows. There is a secret advantage to the days when you have zero motivation. On the days when you feel superhuman, the work is easy. It doesn't build character. But on the days when you feel exhausted, bored, and frustrated, and you still show up and do the work, you are performing high-level mental training. Every minute of work done during a motivation low is worth 10 minutes of work done during a motivation high in terms of building your discipline. When you lean into the lows, you are proving to your subconscious that you are unstoppable. You are showing your brain that mood is no longer the boss of you. This builds an ironclad self-trust. You know that if you can finish a task today, while feeling this bad, you can finish anything. The lows are not obstacles to your progress. They are the forge in which your focus is tempered. Summary of Chapter 7. Motivation is a wave, but success is built on the tide. To stay focused when motivation fades, you must detach your self-worth and your work ethic from your emotional state. Understand your biological peaks and troughs and match your deep work to your highest energy. Automate your decisions to avoid fatigue and replace your to-do list with a non-negotiable schedule. Expect the valley of despair and keep walking through it. Stop waiting for the ocean to give you a wave. Build a boat that can sail even when the water is calm. The system is the boat. The schedule is the sail. Your discipline is the rudder. Core lesson: you don't need to feel like a winner to act like a winner. Let the system do the heavy lifting when the motivation is gone. Core repetition, systems beat motivation. Chapter 8. Become the person who finishes. The silent erosion of the soul. Think about the last time you abandoned a project. Maybe it was an online course that sits at 20% completion. Maybe it was a book that has a bookmark gathering dust on page 50. Maybe it was a business idea that you talked about for 3 months but never actually launched. When we quit, we usually have a very good excuse. We say we ran out of time, or the market changed, or it wasn't the right fit. We tell these lies to other people, but more importantly, we tell them to ourselves. We think that by walking away, we are simply moving on to something better. But there is a hidden, psychological cost to every unfinished task. Every time you start something and don't finish it, you are sending a message to your subconscious mind. You are saying, I am a person who cannot be trusted. My word is not law. My intentions are meaningless. This is the erosion of self-trust. Each abandoned goal is a withdrawal from your internal bank account. If you do this long enough, you eventually go bankrupt. You reach a point where you can't even get excited about a new goal because, deep down, you know you won't see it through. Your own mind starts to heckle you. It says, why are you even trying? You know how this ends. You're just going to quit when it gets hard, like you always do. To stay focused when motivation fades, you must realize that finishing is not just about the result. It is about your identity. You must become the kind of person who finishes because your self-respect depends on it. Repeat this command until it becomes your new internal law: finish what you start. The reputation you build with yourself. We spend so much of our lives worrying about our reputation with others. We want our bosses to think we are hardworking. We want our friends to think we are reliable. We want the world to see us as successful. But the most important reputation you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. When you are alone, in the dark, with no one watching, do you believe in yourself? Do you know, with 100% certainty, that if you decide to do something, it is as good as done? A person who finishes what they start has a quiet confidence. They don't need to brag. They don't need to post their plans on social media to get validation. They have an ironclad internal reputation. They know that they are closer. When you become a finisher, your world changes. Anxiety drops because you no longer have the ghosts of unfinished projects haunting your mind. Focus increases because you have proven to your brain that quitting is not an option on the menu. Speed improves because you stop wasting time on deciding whether to keep going and start spending that time on the work itself. Every finished task, no matter how small, is a deposit into your self-trust. You are proving to yourself, one win at a time, that you are a person of integrity. You are building a version of yourself that is actually capable of achieving the big dreams. The logic of the 99%. In the world of high achievement, 99% is the same as 0%. Imagine you are building a bridge across a massive canyon. You put in the hours. You spend millions of dollars. You build 99% of the bridge. It looks magnificent. It's almost there. How much is that bridge worth? It is worth nothing. You cannot drive a car across 99% of a bridge. In fact, that 99% bridge is worse than no bridge at all, because it represents a massive waste of resources and time. Most people live their lives in the 99% zone. They do the hard work, they suffer through the middle, they get right to the edge of the breakthrough, and then they stop. They quit when they are basically done. They have all the cost of the project with none of the reward. The reward, the money, the recognition, the pride, the transformation, is located in the final 1%. A finisher understands that the value is only unlocked at the end. They don't celebrate progress. They don't celebrate effort. They only celebrate completion. They have a binary mindset: either it is done, or it is not. There is no almost. By adopting this 99% is 0% logic, you force your focus to stay sharp until the very last second. You stop coasting. You sprint through the finish line instead of walking toward it. Finish small, then finish big. If your self-trust is currently bankrupt, you cannot start by trying to finish a 5-year goal. Your brain won't believe you. You have to rebuild your reputation through micro-completions. You must practice the habit of finishing on things that don't even seem to matter. If you open a book, you finish the chapter before you put it down. If you start the dishes, you don't leave one pan soaking. You finish the job. If you decide to go for a 10-minute walk, you don't turn back at 9 minutes. You finish the 10. These small acts are identity training. You are teaching your nervous system that we are the kind of people who see things through. When you master the art of finishing small things, you develop the mental stamina required to finish big things. Success is not a burst of greatness. It is a collection of thousands of tiny tasks that were completed instead of abandoned. Repeat the mantra, finish what you start. The law of diminishing excitement. Why is finishing so hard? Because of a psychological law called the law of diminishing excitement. At the beginning of a project, excitement is high. The novelty of the idea carries you. But as you move toward the end, the excitement drops. The work becomes technical. It becomes about polishing and editing and debugging. The fun parts are over, and the boring parts remain. This is the danger zone for the focus. The amateur quits here because they are no longer feeling it. They go off to find a new project to get that beginning high again. They are novelty junkies. The finisher, however, expects the excitement to fade. They know that the last 10% of any project is a grind. They have detached their work from their feelings. They don't need to be excited to finish. They just need to be disciplined. In fact, the finisher takes a strange pride in the grind. They know that the last 10% is where the filter is. This is where everyone else is quitting. By staying in the work when the excitement is gone, they are outlasting their competition. They are earning their success in the boredom zone. The power of shipping. In the world of creativity and business, there is a concept called shipping. To ship means to release your work to the world. To hit send. To launch the product. To put the end on the manuscript. Many people never ship because they are afraid of judgment. They use perfectionism as a shield. They say, it's not finished yet because it's not perfect. But perfectionism is just a high-class word for cowardice. It is a way to avoid the vulnerability of being finished. If you never finish, you can never be criticized. If you never ship, you can never fail. A finisher knows that done is better than perfect. A finished okay project is infinitely more valuable than a perfect project that only exists on your hard drive. Once you ship, you get data. You get feedback. You get the completion high that allows you to move to the next level. You must become obsessed with shipping. Make it your primary metric of success. Don't ask, was it perfect? Ask, did I ship it? The person who ships the most wins the long game, because they are the ones who are actually in the arena, while everyone else is still practicing in the locker room. The compounding power of completion. Success is not linear. It is exponential. And the exponent is completion. When you finish a project, you don't just get the result of that project. You get a compound reward. Skills. You have learned the entire life cycle of a task, which makes the next task 10% easier. Reputation. Other people see you as a deliverer, which brings more opportunities your way. Confidence. You have updated your self-image, which allows you to set even bigger goals. If you start 10 projects and finish none, you have 0% compounding. If you start 10 and finish 10, you have an unstoppable momentum. Think of a finisher like a snowball rolling down a mountain. In the beginning, they are small and slow. But with every rotation, with every completion, they pick up more snow. They get bigger. They get faster. Eventually, they become an avalanche. A person who has a decade of finished goals behind them is a force of nature. They don't have to try to stay focused. Their focus is a heavy, moving object that nothing can stop. Repeat the mantra, finish what you start. Closing the open loops. To become a finisher today, you must deal with the open loops of your past. An open loop is anything you've started but haven't officially finished or officially quit. These loops act like background apps on a smartphone, draining your battery and slowing down your processor. Today, You must perform a completion audit. Make a list of every unfinished project in your life. Then, for each item, make one of two choices. Complete it. Set a hard deadline and finish it within the next 7 days. Kill it. Decide that you are never going to do it. Admit that it was a bad idea or no longer a priority. Delete the files. Throw away the materials. Officially quit. There is incredible power in official quitting. When you kill a project, you are closing the loop. You are releasing the mental energy that was tied up in thinking about doing it. A finisher isn't someone who does everything. A finisher is someone who completes everything they haven't killed. They are intentional with their energy. They don't have maybes in their life. They only have don'ts and no-goes. The closer's mindset in the face of failure. Sometimes, despite your best efforts, a project fails. The business doesn't make money. The diet doesn't work. The relationship ends. An amateur sees this as a reason to stop. They walk away in shame, leaving a mess behind them. A finisher finishes the failure. They perform a post-mortem. They analyze what went wrong. They clean up the mess. They tie up the loose ends. They close the book with a sense of ceremony. By finishing a failure, you take the power away from it. It is no longer a trauma that haunts you. It is a lesson that you have archived. You are the master of the experience, rather than the victim of it. You can move on to the next goal with a clear head and a clean slate. Summary of Chapter 8. Finishing is the ultimate discipline. It is the only way to build a reputation with yourself that can withstand the storms of life. Stop being a serial starter. Recognize that the value of your work is only unlocked in the final 1%. Rebuild your self-trust through micro-completions and understand that done is always better than perfect. Expect the excitement to fade and lean into the grind of the last 10%. Close the open loops of your past so you can focus 100% of your energy on your future. The world is full of people who have great potential. But the world belongs to the people who ship. Be the person who sees it through. Be the person who delivers. Core lesson. Your self-trust is your most valuable asset. Don't gamble it on unfinished projects. Core repetition. Finish what you start. Chapter 9. Protect your long-term vision. The parable of the 3 stonecutters. There is an old story about a traveler who comes across 3 men working with hammers and chisels on a large pile of stones. He walks up to the first man and asks, "What are you doing?" The man, looking tired and frustrated, grunts, "I'm breaking rocks. It's back-breaking work, the sun is hot, and I can't wait for the day to end." The traveler moves to the second man and asks the same question. The second man, working with a bit more focus, says, "I'm earning a living. I need this paycheck to feed my family and pay my bills. It's hard work, but it's a job." Finally, the traveler approaches the third man. This man is working with a strange intensity. He stops, looks up at the sky with a smile, and says, "I am building a cathedral. I am creating a masterpiece that will stand for 500 years and inspire generations." All 3 men were doing the exact same task. They were all hitting rocks with hammers. But only the third man had a vision. To stay focused when motivation fades, you must realize that the rocks of your daily work, the emails, the spreadsheets, the repetitions, the revisions, are not the goal. They are the building blocks of your cathedral. If you only focus on the rock, you will burn out. But if you protect your vision, you can endure any amount of boredom and discomfort. Vision is the anchor that keeps you steady when the emotional storm of not feeling like it arrives. Why short-term thinking destroys focus? The human brain is naturally nearsighted. Evolutionarily, we are programmed to prioritize the immediate. In the wild, now mattered more than later. Finding food today was more important than planning for next year. In psychology, this is called hyperbolic discounting. It is the tendency for people to choose a smaller reward now over a significantly larger reward later. This is why people choose the comfort of the couch today over the fitness of next month. It's why people choose the distraction of social media now over the success of their business next year. Short-term thinking is the primary killer of focus. When you are nearsighted, You only see the cost of the work. You see the fatigue. You see the boredom. You see the difficulty. Because you are only looking at the immediate pain, your brain logically decides to quit. Quitting feels good now. To stay focused, you must use your prefrontal cortex, the advanced part of your brain, to look past the now. You must practice long-term perspective. You must realize that your current discomfort is a down payment on a future reality. If you don't have a clear vision of that future, you will never be willing to pay the price of the present. Vision creates endurance. There is a famous quote by the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche: "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." This is the secret of the world's most resilient people. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps, observed that the prisoners who were most likely to survive were not the ones who were physically strongest. They were the ones who had a vision for their future. They had a book they needed to finish, a child they needed to see again, or a purpose they needed to fulfill. When you have a powerful vision, your relationship with discomfort changes. Imagine you are told to run 5 miles on a treadmill in a dark room for no reason. You would be bored and exhausted within 10 minutes. You would quit because the how is painful and the why is non-existent. Now, imagine you are running those same 5 miles, but at the end of the 5 miles is the person you love most in the world, and they need your help. Suddenly, you don't feel the fatigue in your legs. You don't care about the sweat in your eyes. The why has made the how tolerable. When your focus fades, it is often because you have lost sight of your cathedral. You have stopped seeing the finished result and started seeing only the rocks. To get your focus back, you must stop working and start visualizing. Reconnect with the end goal. Remember why you started this journey in the first place. Repeat this principle: vision makes the price worth paying. Designing a sensory vision. Most people's vision is too vague. They say, "I want to be successful," or "I want to be wealthy." These are words, not visions. Words do not trigger the emotional centers of the brain. To protect your long-term focus, your vision must be sensory. You must be able to see it, hear it, and feel it in your mind. If your vision is a new home, you shouldn't just think house. You should imagine the feeling of the key in the lock. You should imagine the smell of the wood in the hallway. You should imagine the silence of the neighborhood at night. If your vision is a finished book, you should imagine the weight of the physical copy in your hands. You should imagine the texture of the paper. You should imagine the feeling of your name on the cover. When your vision is sensory, it becomes real to your subconscious mind. Your brain starts to treat the vision as a destination that you are already traveling toward. When you sit down to do the boring work, you aren't just typing. You are moving 1 inch closer to the weight of that book or the sound of that key. By making the future present in your mind, you give yourself the emotional fuel to handle the grind. Daily alignment, the compass check. A vision is not something you look at once a year on New Year's Day. A vision is a compass. If a ship is sailing across the ocean and it is off by just 1 degree, it will end up hundreds of miles away from its destination. To reach the goal, the captain must check the compass every single day and make micro-adjustments. You must do the same. Every morning, before you check your phone, before you check your email, you must check your vision. Ask yourself, does the person I want to become do what I am about to do today? This is the daily alignment. It forces you to look at your to-do list through the lens of your long-term future. It helps you distinguish between urgent noise and visionary action. Answering 50 unimportant emails might feel urgent, but does it move you toward the cathedral? Usually, the answer is no. Writing 1 page of your book might not feel urgent, but does it move you toward the cathedral? Yes. When you align your daily actions with your long-term vision, you stop drifting. You move with the intentionality of a person who knows exactly where they are going. Repeat the mantra, vision makes the price worth paying. The anchor in the storm. In the life of every achiever, there are storms. These are the moments of intense doubt, the moments of failure, and the moments where everyone around you tells you to give up. In these moments, motivation is useless. Motivation is like a sail, it only works when the wind is blowing in the right direction. But vision is the anchor. When the storm hits, you don't look at the waves, you look at the anchor. You remind yourself that this storm is temporary, but the cathedral is permanent. You remind yourself that you are not working for the approval of people today. You are working for the legacy of your future self. Vision gives you perspective. It allows you to see your current problems as small in comparison to your goal. If you are building a billion-dollar company, a rejected sales call is just a tiny ripple in the water. If you are building a masterpiece, a bad review is just a bit of dust. Without vision, every setback feels like a catastrophe. With vision, every setback is just data to help you adjust your course. Protecting the vision from pollution. Your vision is a fragile thing. It can be easily polluted by the opinions, doubts, and small-mindedness of the people around you. There are vision thieves everywhere. These are people who have given up on their own cathedrals and, because they are uncomfortable with your ambition, they try to pull you back down to their level. They say things like, "Be realistic," or "Why are you working so hard?" or "That will never work." To stay focused, you must protect your vision. Be selective with your circle. Surround yourself with other cathedral builders. Surround yourself with people who talk about ideas and futures, not people and problems. Practice silence. You don't need to tell everyone your vision. In fact, research shows that when you announce your big goals to everyone, your brain gets a premature dopamine hit that makes you less likely to actually do the work. Keep your vision in your heart. Let your results be your noise. Visual reminders. Put physical symbols of your vision in your workspace. A photo, a quote, or an object that represents the finish line. When your eyes wander during a moment of boredom, they should land on something that reminds you why you are in the chair. The future self meditation. One of the most powerful ways to stay focused when motivation fades is to build a relationship with your future self. Think of yourself 5 years from now. Imagine that person is standing in front of you. If you quit today, if you give in to the boredom, if you follow the distraction, how does that future self feel? They feel disappointed. They are still stuck in the same place. They are still struggling with the same problems because you didn't have the discipline to move them forward. Now, imagine that you stayed focused. Imagine you won the day. Imagine you finished the project. How does that future self feel? They are grateful. They are living the life you dreamed of. They are standing in the cathedral because you were willing to break the rocks. Whenever you feel like quitting, remember that you are not just doing work. You are performing an act of service for your future self. You are the ancestor of the person you want to become. Don't let them down. Repeat the mantra, vision makes the price worth paying. Endurance is the ability to delay gratification. At its core, protecting your long-term vision is about the mastery of time. The amateur is a slave to the present. They want the cookie now, the sleep now, the distraction now. They have no power over their future because they are always consuming their future to pay for their present. The professional is the master of the future. They are willing to suffer in the present to win in the future. They understand that every hour of focused work is a seed planted in the garden of their vision. You must become a long-term investor in yourself. Realize that the world is designed to make you a short-term consumer. The apps, the ads, and the culture all want you to focus on now. To stay focused, you must be a rebel. You must be the person who says, "I don't care about the now. I care about the vision." When you detach from the need for immediate results, you become unstoppable. Because if you don't need to see the result today to keep working, nothing can stop you from working. You have transcended the motivation cycle and entered the vision cycle. Summary of Chapter 9. Motivation is temporary, but vision is permanent. To stay focused when the feelings fade, you must look past the rocks of the daily grind and see the cathedral you are building. Understand the biological trap of short-term thinking and counteract it with a sensory-rich vision. Check your compass daily to ensure your actions are aligned with your North Star. Protect your vision from the pollution of small-minded people and build a relationship of service with your future self. The weight of the work is only heavy when you forget why you are doing it. Lift your gaze. See the finish line. Remember the cathedral. Core lesson. If your vision is big enough, your excuses become invisible. Core repetition. Vision makes the price worth paying. Chapter 10. Outlast everyone. The last light in the building. If you were to walk through the business district of any major city at 3 a.m., or through the practice facilities of any elite sports team in the off-season, you would notice something consistent. Most of the windows are dark. Most of the doors are locked. The world is asleep. But in every city, in every field, and in every discipline, there is always one light still burning. There is one person still in the chair. There is one person still on the track. There is one person who is still working long after the motivation of the morning has turned into the exhaustion of the night. This book has given you the tools to start, the systems to stay focused, and the mindset to handle the grind. But this final chapter is about the ultimate competitive advantage. It is not about talent. It is not about luck. It is about attrition. Success, at its highest level, is often a war of attrition. It is a game of last man standing. In a world of fast starters and even faster quitters, your greatest weapon is simply your ability to stay longer than everyone else. Success as a war of attrition. We are taught to believe that success goes to the best, the smartest, the fastest, the most gifted. But if you look at the reality of long-term achievement, you will see a different pattern. The best often fail because they have never had to develop the muscle of persistence. Things came easily to them, so the moment they hit a wall they couldn't leap over, they quit. They weren't calloused for the long game. Most of your competitors, whether they are other businesses, other artists, or even just the other versions of you that want to give up, will eventually quit. They will quit when the economy dips. They will quit when they get a better offer for an easier life. They will quit when the novelty of the goal wears off and the boring middle sets in. They will quit when they face their first major public failure. This is the great secret of the high achiever. You don't always have to outthink them. You just have to outlast them. If you can stay in the arena when everyone else has gone home to the comfort of their couches, you win by default. Persistence is the great equalizer. It turns average people into extraordinary legends. Repeat this mantra until it becomes your code of conduct. Stay longer than everyone else. Endurance beats talent. Talent is like a flash of lightning. It is bright, it is impressive, and it catches everyone's attention. But lightning is temporary. You cannot build a civilization on lightning. Endurance is like a river. A river is not fast. A river is not flashy. But a river is persistent. It flows day and night, century after century. Eventually, through sheer persistence, the soft water of the river cuts through the hardest rock of the mountain and creates the Grand Canyon. Talent creates fast starters. Endurance creates finishers. The world is full of talented people who are almost successful. They have half-finished masterpieces and almost launched companies. They are the sprinting hares of the world. You must be the tortoise. You must be the person who moves at a steady, unrelenting pace. When you have a long-game mindset, you stop worrying about the people who are sprinting past you in the short term. Let them sprint. Let them burn their energy. Let them have the motivation high. You know that a year from now, they will be exhausted and looking for a new trend, while you will still be there, moving forward, one win the day at a time. The long game. Thinking in decades. Most people fail because they think in days, weeks, and months. They want the result now. When the result doesn't arrive in 30 days, they feel unmotivated and they pivot to something else. The finisher thinks in years and decades. When you expand your time horizon, your focus becomes much sharper. You stop panicking over bad days. If you are playing a 10-year game, a bad Tuesday doesn't matter. It's just one data point in a massive sea of progress. Thinking in decades allows you to make better decisions. The short-term thinker takes the shortcut that burns them out. The long-term thinker takes the steady path that builds a foundation. When you decide that you are going to stay in your field for the next 20 years, you become unstoppable. Because what can the world do to stop a person who refuses to leave? Failure cannot stop you. It's just a lesson for year 3. Boredom cannot stop you. It's just the background noise of year 7. The person who can stay focused the longest is the person who eventually owns the market. Repeat the mantra, stay longer than everyone else. The Valley of Death. In the startup world, there is a term called the Valley of Death. It is the period between the initial launch of a company and the point where it becomes profitable. Most companies die in this valley. They run out of money, they run out of energy, or they run out of belief. Your goals have a valley of death, too. It is that period where you have put in a massive amount of work, but you haven't seen the breakthrough yet. You are tired, you are being criticized, and your motivation is a distant memory. This is the separation zone. This is where the world asks you, how much do you really want this? Most people answer that question by quitting. They decide the price is too high. But the person who outlasts everyone understands that the valley of death is a necessary filter. It is there to protect the reward. If success was easy to reach, the reward would have no value. When you are in the valley, don't look for a way out. Look for a way through. Keep your eyes on the long-term vision we discussed in Chapter 9, and keep your feet moving according to the process we discussed in Chapter 3. The only way to fail is to stop walking. Persistence is the ultimate hack. We spend so much time looking for productivity hacks. We want the perfect app, the perfect supplement, or the perfect morning routine. But the ultimate hack is simply not stopping. If you work on a goal for 1 hour every single day for 10 years, you will be in the top 0.01% of the world in that field. It is a mathematical certainty. You don't even have to be great at first. The sheer volume of work and the compound interest of your skills will eventually make you a master. Consistency is the cheat code for life. While everyone else is looking for the secret door, you are just hammering on the front door until it breaks. It might take you a year, it might take you 5, but the door will break. The universe eventually bows to the person who refuses to take no for an answer. The quiet pride of the finisher. There is a specific kind of pride that comes from being the last one standing. It is not a loud, arrogant pride. It is a quiet, deep, and unshakable confidence. It is the feeling you have when you look around at the end of a long journey and realize that everyone who started with you has disappeared. You are the only one left. This pride doesn't come from the trophy or the money. It comes from the knowledge that you defeated your own resistance. You ignored the voice that told you to quit. You outlasted your own boredom. You proved to yourself that you have a depth that most people will never know. When you become a person who outlasts everyone, you no longer fear the future. You know that no matter what happens, no matter how hard the economy gets, no matter how much the technology changes, you will still be there. You have a survival instinct that is more valuable than any bank account. Repeat the mantra, stay longer than everyone else. The final standard. The Outlast Rule. To implement the Outlast Everyone philosophy in your life, you must adopt a final set of standards. 1. The one more rule. Whenever you feel like you are finished, whenever you think you've reached your limit, do one more. One more rep, one more page. One more call. One more day. By always doing one more than your brain wants to do, you are constantly expanding your endurance ceiling. You are training yourself to be the person who always has a reserve. 2. The don't look sideways rule. Stop checking your competition. Stop worrying about who is ahead of you or who is moving faster. Their journey has nothing to do with yours. When you look sideways, you lose your stride. Focus entirely on your own win-the-day scorecard. The only person you are outlasting is the version of you that wanted to quit this morning. 3. The winter preparation. Expect the winter periods. Expect times when the world seems to be working against you. Instead of complaining about the cold, build a fire and keep working. The people who outlast everyone are the ones who don't need fair weather to be productive. The completion of the journey. We began this book with a simple premise. Stop waiting to feel ready. We explored the reality that discipline is stronger than emotion. We learned to focus on the process, eliminate the noise, and master the art of boring consistency. We trained our minds to ignore resistance, detached ourselves from motivation cycles, and became the person who finishes. We protected our long-term vision. And now, we arrive at the final truth. The focus you seek is not a destination you reach. It is a practice you maintain. It is a daily decision to stay in the chair, to keep the phone in the other room, and to value your future self more than your present comfort. You have all the tools. You have the cathedral in your mind. You have the system in your schedule. The only thing left to do is to stay. Stay when it gets hard. Stay when it gets boring. Stay when it gets lonely. The world is waiting for you to quit. Your biology is waiting for you to quit. Your competition is waiting for you to quit. Don't. Outlast the doubt. Outlast the fatigue. Outlast the almosts and the maybes. The rewards of life are not given to the most motivated. They are given to the ones who were still there when the lights went out. Your future is not written in the inspiration of your starts. It is written in the persistence of your finishes. Stay the course. Win the day. Outlast everyone. Final summary. Success is not a sprint. It is a war of attrition. To stay focused when motivation fades, you must shift your perspective to the long game. Understand that endurance is a more reliable engine than talent. Expect the valley of death and the plateaus of boredom. Use the one more rule to callous your mind and build a quiet pride in your ability to outstay your competition. You are no longer a slave to your moods. You are a master of your standards. You are a finisher. You are a cathedral builder. You are the last light in the building. Core lesson: the ultimate competitive advantage is the refusal to quit. Final repetition: stay longer than everyone else. The end.